Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man's Core channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'll be reacting my second scary storyteller video for you guys, and this one is Shiny Gold Tails, and the video that I'll be watching is 3 True Chillin' Cabin Horror Stories. Without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag. Okay, here we go.
I'm 18 years old, and I grew up in Michigan.
Okay.
I've lived in the country for as long as I can remember. On one particularly hot summer weekend, a couple of my friends, including my boyfriend Tony and my older brother Brad, decided we were going to go camping for the weekend. Tony's parents owned a cabin way out in Ludington, surrounded by a huge wooded area with a personal lake and no neighbors for at least 4 miles. But being the stupid teenagers we were, we didn't think about that. We were all ready to party, like any other teens would be.
Of course.
After we were there for 2 hours, the fun had started. Tony's friends brought tons of alcohol, enough to last for the weekend, so we wouldn't be bored, as we had no service in the area.
First of all, you don't have to be getting hammered just to have fun and enjoy the party. I get it, there's a lot of people now that want to have alcohol at parties, but you got to picture this. If you're out in the middle of nowhere and somebody gets hurt, how are you going to get them some help if you're hammered out of your mind and passed out? And plus, if you don't have no cell service, that could really bite you hard too, because you won't be able to call nobody. So I always recommend, if you're going out in the middle of the woods that's like got no hardly any good cell reception, bring a satellite phone, because you'll be able to call anybody without having to worry about the line going dead. But anyway, let's continue with this person's story and see what happens next.
No movies to watch. When the clock struck 12 a.m., it was pitch black, and we had a huge fire going. There were a total of 6 people, including me and Tony. As we talked and laughed around the fire, we were so distracted that we didn't even notice that my brother had frozen. His eyes were fixated on one section of the woods. Keep in mind that we were all intoxicated at the time. Eventually our talking ceased when Tony realized that his friend and my brother had an emotionless expression. "Hey dude, you alright?" he asked. Silence. Brad didn't reply or make any movements that would indicate he heard him. After that, I started to get scared as well, and so did the other 2 girls. It took a lot for my brother to act that way, and eventually we noticed that he was excessively staring at a certain spot in the woods. I turned my head and followed his gaze the best I could, and when I finally caught on to what he was staring at, my heart dropped. Right there in the woods was a dog. At least that's what I thought it was. It was some person's dog that had just wandered off. But then my brain kicked in, and I realized that there weren't any neighbors for miles. So how could there be a dog?
Oh, heck no. I'll be wondering that myself. Why is there a dog in the woods unless it's a stray dog? But I guarantee you it's not. Probably a skinwalker that transformed itself into a dog to get closer. I mean, no normal person would be looking at a dog non-stop and not say nothing. So it must be hypnotizing your friend there. I don't know. But let's just see.
My mind started to race while Tony still tried to get Brad to speak or move. In one motion, the dog stood up tall. And when I say tall, I mean gigantic. It had to be at least 6 feet. Everyone saw it. How could you not? The others gasped when they finally realized why my brother was still as a stick. No one moved for what seemed like hours, and Tony muttered, "No tail." No one heard except Brad, and I swear to you when I say his eyes widened as big as pan saucers. That freaked me out immediately.
Oh, it would definitely freak anybody out, for sure. Just seeing what you thought was a dog stand up on its hind legs, walking like a normal human being, and being around 6 foot tall and has no tail, your mind will be having a hard time trying to process what you're seeing. At this point, I'll be like, grab the essentials and get out of here, because I definitely don't want to be around a skinwalker.
"What did you say?" one of the other girls asked. "It has no tail," he hissed at her. My heartbeat stopped. He was right. There was no tail on that thing. Suddenly, my clouded mind cleared up in a fraction of a second when I realized what that thing was. Now I understood why my brother was basically in a trance. That thing was a skinwalker. My instincts kicked in right then and there, but before I could nope out of there, the thing let off a terrible stench, like rotting meat, before screaming a terrible sounding scream. The sound was enough to scare the crap out of everyone. My brother was first up out of his chair. He started shouting native words to the creature, while I told everyone to get inside. No one questioned me when they saw how dead serious I was, especially Tony. He's never seen me so scared, so it was a bad situation. We all hightailed it into the cabin, with my brother in tow, still shouting native words at the creature.
Well, I hope he's chanting out some Native American spell or phrase to the Skinwalker to make him back away. Because if you just keep on rambling stuff, he's going to keep coming towards you.
Which seemed to keep it at bay while we got inside. He slammed and locked the door before turning off all the lights. Then he grabbed a special ash from the kitchen counter and started throwing it at every window and door while chanting. Of course, he had everyone freaked out and basically in tears at that moment. After he was done, no one said a word for a long time. All of us were still in shock. He grabbed our dad's pistol and had it close to him for hours. Everyone was entirely too shaken up to even question what happened. We must have fallen asleep eventually, because I woke up to my brother packing all his stuff into the 2 cars early in the morning. I understood why. We had native family, so we knew what we were dealing with, and we knew it could come back eventually, and maybe not alone. Before we left, I did a blessing on the cabin and spoke a few calming words to the still very freaked out girls. We left as soon as everything was packed. To this day, we still haven't explained exactly to our friends what happened that night. They never bothered to ask us either.
Well, I'm glad you guys are in a Native American family and was able to remember what to say at a Skinwalker just to scare it off and then to protect your cabin. Because if you didn't know that, that Skinwalker probably would have lunged and killed all of them. But I'm glad they did the right thing and packed up the next morning, because if I was there, I would have been standing there another minute. Because you never know, that thing might come back. That is something you definitely do not want to see in the woods. But anyway, I'm just glad they're okay, so let's get to story number 2, shall we?
My grandparents always wanted to do something different when they retired.
Right.
My grandpa had always liked the mountains, so they decided to get a cabin in the mountains.
Hey, I like the mountains too, and I wish I could go up there and rent a cabin just to enjoy nature at its finest. But I tell you what, renting a cabin now is starting to get a little pricey, especially if you try to go find one that's luxurious looking.
It was about 2 hours from our home. One weekend, they invited my parents, my brother, and I to stay up there with them. We agreed, so we went up the following day. When we arrived, I was bored, and so was my brother. I was 11 years old, and he was 16. We were roaming around, trying to find something to do. We walked down to a hill near the cabin and sat by the road. When we reached the bottom of the hill, which was basically just a forest, we found a long rope hanging from a giant tree. My brother and I turned this rope into a swing, and soon everyone was enjoying it. I already felt creeped out by the area. We could hear barking dogs in the distance, and the trees were thick, with drop-offs to new hills. I couldn't help but feel uneasy, even though we were having fun. My brother and my mom found a treehouse that looked like it hadn't been occupied in a while. I was too freaked out to go inside, but they thought it was fine.
Hey, if I saw a treehouse, I would like to go explore it too, but always carry like a stick flashlight or some sort of handgun with you just in case, because you don't want no scary animal to jump up and run towards you. You get to not only enjoy nature from a high point up in the trees, I bet you get some good fresh air that way.
We spent most of our time playing outside with the swing and hiking. Eventually, we left the cabin and returned home. When we did that, my brother went to his room and started playing on his phone. Later, he came out of his room and told my mom that he'd been taking pictures of the cabin, and he started to show them to us. As I said before, when you went out the back door of the cabin, there was a hill that led to the trees. We had taken some pictures around that area. When he showed them to us, we couldn't help but be freaked out. I don't have the best memory of exactly what it looked like, because I only got one glance, and it was a while ago. But I do remember that I was freaked out. In the corner of the photo, almost perfectly set up, was the shadow of a person wearing all black.
Oh, heck no. I'm surprised that they didn't even notice them while they're at the cabin, but I guess they didn't stay there that long to even find out that they were being stalked. But that'd be creepy to capture on your camera if you were just taking pictures and didn't even see them.
They were just standing there in the corner of the picture, with a black hood covering their head. I don't know how we didn't see or notice that person.
Yeah, exactly.
How my brother had taken a picture that close, and we didn't even see him standing there. How could we all have been there and not heard that person walk by? And why were they just standing there, looking at the camera? I was definitely freaked out and a little wary to return to the cabin again. I did return, though, a few months to a year later, with a friend of mine who was also my neighbor. We were driving from the town, which was about 15 minutes away from the cabin.
Okay.
I was scared because it was night, and all we could see was in the car's headlights. It was one small road in the middle of just trees and blackness, and I heard my friend say, "That was creepy." I asked what, and he said that he'd seen someone standing at the side of the road in the pitch black night. Both incidents were too creepy for me, and I still get freaked out when I think about that guy in black just watching us. I returned a few more times, but eventually my grandparents sold the cabin. After they sold it, I've not been back. And I wonder if the new owners ever go down to that swing, and if they'll ever encounter the man in the black hood.
You know, I'll be surprised if they did. So I'm guarantee you that this person's probably a ghost of whoever used to occupy that cabin, probably. Or it might be just a homeless person wearing all black roaming around. I don't know, but that is creepy. Because after I saw that, I'll be like, I don't know if I want to go back to that cabin or not. Because you never know what type of intentions that dude has. But man, that just gives anybody shivers down their spine.
I used to live in Japan, but I recently moved to a town somewhere in America. There was a story going around that a cult had a cabin somewhere in the woods near our town, and that they were doing incantations, summoning spirits and specters, the usual paranormal stuff. Me and my friend Jack, who I met when I first moved to the town, didn't really believe in the paranormal, so when we had the opportunity to do so, we would camp near the section where the cabin was rumored to be, and we would just search around for it. It didn't take long before we found it. The cabin was completely hideous. It was infested with cockroaches, spiders, and even some centipedes. The left side of the cabin was decayed slightly, and the right side had a bit of a termite problem. At first it looked like an old rundown cabin. Then we took a second, much closer look. It had a horrible stench. I gagged and almost vomited. Even though I was busy dealing with the stench, Jack was able to get a close look at the walls. They were covered with creepy symbols and signs, upside-down crosses, and blood-red eyes. I thought of calling the police, or simply running. Jack, however, horrified as he was, insisted on going into the cabin.
Are you kidding me? If this cabin's got weird symbols and upside down crosses and you see somebody drawing blood red eyes, that's something you do not want to step foot into, because you never know if whatever these people were doing, they probably raised up some evil spirits. You walk into that cabin, it might be attached to you. Just do what your friend is saying. Run and call the police and see if they can do an investigation on that property.
"I'm not believing this. It's probably just really good deco," he said. As reluctant as I was, I pushed onward, Jack leading with his flashlight. We opened the door slowly. That's when I couldn't take it anymore. I vomited onto the grass to the left of the cabin. The reason I vomited was that the stench had gotten even worse. Just in front of the door was a dead deer. It had been butchered and left to rot. That must have been the source of the horrible smell. Jack gently pushed it to the side so we could get in. He waited a bit for me, and we kept going. The inside was very much like the exterior. creepy symbols carved into the walls. We went into the main living room of the cabin. It had a big ritual circle. The walls were different too, this time now sporting words such as devil, beast, our master, and the end. It was all blood red, and I think the blood was real.
Yeah, because I guarantee you that there was probably some sacrificing done in that building, and they used the blood to draw stuff on the walls. Like I said earlier, turn around and get out of there, because you definitely don't want to be running into any of these cult members showing up back at that cabin.
The scariest thing about it was that the blood was still wet, meaning that it must have been fresh and done recently. That was when I had it. I couldn't take any more. I turned to the cabin door, and that's when I saw something that I can never unsee. About a quarter mile from the cabin, I could see a group of 5 or 6 people approaching. They were dressed in all black. I think they were all men, but from that distance, I'm not really sure. We couldn't go out the front without being seen, so we bolted to the back of the cabin. I found a window, the only window in the entire place, and I tried to open it, but it simply didn't budge. It was dark by then, so we crouched down and hid behind a pile of debris. We huddled down there and waited, and eventually we heard the group enter the cabin. It would be impossible for me to explain what we heard that night, but I can tell you that it was some kind of a ritual. I don't know anything about that kind of stuff, so I can't tell the meaning of any of it, but it was incredibly creepy.
Oh, believe me, you don't have to explain it. You say they're doing a ritual, I guarantee you it is creepy, raising up demonic forces in that place. But I knew it that they were coming back, and if they saw you, they probably would have tortured you and used you in their ritual stuff, probably. But thank God they didn't see you once they walked in.
Jack and I stayed hidden for hours, waiting for a chance to leave. The sun had risen by the time we were able to come out. I tried the window again, and now that it was daytime, I could see that it was locked. I unlocked it and opened it. How silly I thought I was not to check.
Of course, you could avoid hearing what they were saying all this time just by unlocking the window and getting out. But I get it, you were too terrified to even check that and just decided to hide.
I made a mental note to always do that, and then I climbed out the window. Jack followed me. We ran back to our campsite, and Jack went to his tent while I went to mine. I recapped what happened, and then put this into my diary. Though this wasn't the nearest near-death experience I've ever had, it was definitely the most extreme. I waited for Jack to wake up, and then we headed back to town. I've never told anyone about this until now.
That sounded like a near-death experience. Because imagine if you got caught by one of them cult members, you would have been not telling the story. Let's just put it that way. Thank God they did not get noticed by any of those people in the black robes. They were able to get out without being caught, and they were not followed to their campsite, and no demon stuff was attached to them, basically. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Shiny Gold Tales reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.